Some task force. He also served as a lieutenant commander in the Office of Naval Intelligence. From what you've heard now, these new developments, what's this sounding like to you?
Well, they're going to have to find motive, Shep, in order to get down to the real facts. I tell you, the police, the law enforcement community, they're just putting too much information out too soon without getting facts.
Oh, you think?
There's a lot of speculation that is really unnecessary. Look, I remember, I may be a little older than you, but Jack Webb, he used to say, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. We have to zero in on facts. I think the key is Jordan. What did he do for 7 months in Jordan? Was he radicalized? I don't believe he was directed by ISIS. He could have been radicalized, came back, and as we know now through the writings, he had a real bone of contention with the government and in other areas of his life.
One thing, if you'll indulge me, does it matter? And I ask that because this is a guy who was apparently on a bender. He'd had some problems. In the absence of ISIS or other terrorist groups, would this guy have done what he did? And if the answer is no, then isn't that the end of it? Isn't he inspired by what it is they do, and isn't that the end of it?
It matters if he was inspired by ISIS because this is part of their MO. This is a war we're at. But Shep, you bring up a good point. The question is, why military targets? That has to be answered.
Well, that's what ISIS says to do.
Yeah, exactly. So if he was inspired by ISIS, radicalized by ISIS, then perhaps he was directed to hit a military target. But now what we have coming out in his writings is that he had real serious mental problems. And that's why motive is so important to discover.
Well, we know from much of the reading of the people that ISIS has targeted that they often go out after people with mental problems. A detailed piece that's Googleable in the New York Times is one very good example.
Shep, he is a prime target of ISIS. I mean, he runs the whole profile. Discontent with the government, unhappy, depressed, perhaps emotional and mental problems. ISIS looks for people like this. They embrace them, radicalize them, and they say, guess what? We're your best friend. Do us this job.
But here's the question. If that's ISIS's message, and if he hadn't had any contact with them directly, hadn't read specifics of what they said online, but was just part of the American fabric and hears what it is ISIS is wanting all the time and decided to go do it for that reason, isn't that enough?
Well, the missing link is Jordan, as I said before. What on earth did he do for 7 months in Jordan? Once we get the answer to that question, this whole thing may unfold rather rapidly.
I don't want to equate the two, but just by way of example, when we started having school shootings all the time, there started to be more school shootings, and the copycats were driving the world insane and causing horrors for families all across this nation. I witnessed a lot of them. What the hell's going to happen if that starts to be the pattern?
It's here. It's here. I'm sure we're going to see more and more and more. And I've said over and over again, the Department of Homeland Security has to start sending funds to local cops. The cops on the street, the cops in the neighborhood. Look, I was a street cop. I knew who was blowing their nose at 6 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah.
We know what's going on in the neighborhoods. In order to fight this war effectively, get the local cops engaged.
I guess we watch our children and our children's friends and our neighbors and try to do the best we can to stop this.
You've said it on this show quite often. If you see something, say something.
Doesn't sound like anybody saw something here. It's nice to talk to you again. Thank you.
Thank you, Shep.
Well,